Hills of Success is a series that promotes money matters to smart women. During each episode, Zaneilia Harris will share money lessons that debunk the typical messaging you hear around women and money. So if you want to gain valuable money tips wrapped around professional advice to help you navigate your personal money and professional journey, tune in to Hills of Success. Hello, I would like to welcome you to Hills of Success, a Finance and Stilettos podcast series. I'm Zaneilia Harris, author of the book Finance and Stilettos, Money Matters for the Well-Heeled Woman, certified financial planner, former member of the CNBC Financial Advisor Council, and president of Harris & Harris Wealth Management Group, a firm focused on the financial success of professional women who are going through various life transitions such as job change, marriage, widowhood, or retirement. I am so excited to welcome my guest, Dr. Tisa Silver Canady. She is a financial wellness advocate for today's scholar. Specializing in student loan debt, she helps new borrowers think strategically about financing higher education, while advising existing borrowers on their strategy to tackle, manage, and eventually eradicate their student loan debt. As an author and collegiate financial wellness expert, she has personally advised students and families on the repayment of more than $50 million in student loans. She is a highly sought after thinker on personal finance. She has authored personal finance content for outlets including Forbes, Investopedia, and BET. Her financial insights have been featured in radio, television, and print outlets, including on Time, Essence Magazine, Fox Business, MSN Money, Yahoo Finance, and Maryland Public Television. Tisa is passionate about how the student loan crisis has perpetuated a wealth gap in the African American community. In 2020, she launched Melanin, Money, and Matriculation, a book series and consumer education initiative. The book series includes Borrowing While Black and the forthcoming titles Black Women Beyond the Bachelor's and When Borrowing Becomes a Family Affair. Tisa is on a mission to increase financial education around student loan borrowing. She is a double graduate of the University of Delaware and has earned a doctorate in higher education, administration, and community college leadership from Morgan State University. Tisa is the founder and managing director of Silver Canady and Associates, LLC, an educational research and consulting firm based in Prince George's County, Maryland. Let's welcome my guest, Dr. Tisa Silver Canady. I am so excited to have my guest, Tisa Silver Canady, here to just talk about student loan debt. She just launched a book, series and consumer education initiative called Melanin, Money, and Matriculation. So Tisa, tell us more about your initiative, what you're trying to do, and what things you want your readers to obtain after reading the book.
Okay. So I came up with Melanin, Money, and Matriculation after looking over different outcomes for Black students in higher education. And unfortunately, the stats that I found were just not very positive. Black students tend to borrow in larger amounts, borrow more often, graduate at lower rates, earn less upon graduation, and then experience much greater difficulty in repayment than their white counterparts. So when I put all of those stats together, I thought, wow, this is really a losing formula for the Black community, especially if our goal is to begin accumulating wealth and, have some degree of financial independence. So I put all these things together, and then I looked for resources that were directed towards students and families, and I didn't see a lot out there. So I decided that I would put something together that would give them an overview of this higher education financing system and show them how different the experience ends up being for many Black borrowers. I put the book series out because I want to help people increase awareness, but ultimately improve outcomes. Because if you're aware of the system that you're dealing with, it's not going to change that the system is what it is, but it can empower you with tools so that you can maximize benefits and hopefully minimize debt.
Wow. Wow. You said a lot. And a lot of powerful things. A lot of powerful things. So in getting it, and I know you deal with more than just student loan debt, but the focus right now, or one of your focuses, is student loan debt. So was there a driver other than the stats behind the focus on student loan debt? Like, was it something that you saw in your family, or just around you, or with students that you worked with on a
Yes,
collegiate level? Like, what was that personal driver in regards
absolutely.
to student loan debt? Yeah.
It was definitely dealing with students. I used to work in a financial aid office, and a part of my role there was to provide individual counseling to students and their families when it came time for them to repay loans. So I helped current students, but also students who had graduated years earlier, heard about the service and started coming back to campus to ask, can you help me figure out a plan to pay back this student loan debt? So I started to look at the people who were coming to me and the experiences of those people. Now, I don't want to draw conclusions about a larger population based on the people that I interacted with individually, but it was just very clear that some people were having greater difficulty than others. And the people who were having greater difficulty tended to be Black women. And for me, that was definitely a trigger, something that made me say, you know what? You need to do something about this. And at the time, I didn't know what to do. I thought the only thing that I could do right then was I can help the people that come to me, and I can try to make sure that I help them to get a firmer grasp on their student loans and how they could fit student loans into their life instead of building their life around student loans. So that was one thing that brought purpose to the work for me. The second thing that was that I was actually on Twitter one night, and there was a BET special. I think it was called "Young, Gifted, and Broke," and they were talking to Black students and some administrators from HBCUs about this borrowing experience and how many people were struggling with it and feeling like, again, they had to wrap their lives around the loans instead of being able to fit the loans into the rest of their lives. And between those two experiences, I thought, okay, there's room for me to do something. I can only do so much individually, meeting with people, but I figured if I put this together in a book that's concise, that's also visually appealing, perhaps I can increase awareness and more people will spread the word. And eventually we can improve some outcomes for the Black community when it comes to higher education.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And, the whole series around, or the program Young, Gifted, and Broke, that resonated with me in such a strong way. And the fact of how, with Black women wanting to do better by furthering their education, so there are statistics around the fact that, a large portion of Black women are choosing to further their education and then to graduate on the other side and feel like, well, I got all this education so that I can make a better life for myself, and then find myself that I'm overwhelmed with debt that I still can't get ahead. So what are some of the tips you've shared with some of your students and even in your book that you recommend can help people when it comes to this student loan debt issue?
Okay, so one thing, and this is particularly for Black women, is to really think about where higher education fits into the trajectory you see for your career. Because I've done this, and I've spoken to several other people who do it. It's like there's something that tells us, oh, you know what? Well, I want to do this, so I got to go get another degree. And there's this, sometimes there's a feeling of a need to validate that you can do this job or you can be in this environment because you've got all these degrees and this stamp of approval that, you can do this. Well, degrees are nice, but degrees don't always have a necessary purpose in your life and on your journey. So my first tip would be for people to really truly think, do you need another degree? Just because you want to change careers doesn't mean that you have to go out and get a whole nother degree so that you can be capable of doing a job. So less, definitely less leaning on higher education to prove that we deserve to occupy a certain space, and more thinking about, is this particular degree necessary to where I want to go? The second thing I would say is to be strategic in thinking about where you want to go. And this is something that didn't necessarily click for me until I was probably late 20s, early 30s when this came about in my mind. Prior to that, I was kind of reacting to things like, oh, so and so has a job over here. They think I'd be a good person for it. All right, I'll try it. And things just kind of came my way. And I'm definitely thankful for those opportunities. But after a while, it got to feel like, okay, I'm just kind of blowing in the wind here. Other people are thinking of me for certain things, and I'm thankful for my network and again for those opportunities. But how much of this is truly driven by me? What is my purpose? Where am I trying to go?
Right.
And once I had those
Yes.
thoughts, when I started looking for jobs, my search became much more targeted. I started to say, well, I'm not just going to take this job because somebody else thinks I'm good for it. I'm going to say, well, these are the types of things that I'm trying to do. What organizations have an opening for somebody trying to do these things? And that made my job search a lot easier. So if you are already, in a career, I would say you want to stay in the organization. Look at the organizational chart. Look for whose job on that chart is the ideal one for you. Read up on that person. See if you can get an introduction to them. Ask them about their journey and begin to build a relationship there so that you can truly understand if that's where you want to go and what's the best way to get there. And does that path need to include additional higher education? I totally understand the feeling of, needing that validation or questioning whether you're capable of doing certain jobs. And higher ed is an easy place to go for validation. You literally get a piece of paper that says you did this, this is your degree. But at the same
Right.
time, if
Yes.
you're in spaces where people don't value you or your input, it doesn't matter how many degrees you have, they're still going to look at you exactly the same. So it's your responsibility to be the driver, to think about where it is that you want to go and plot the steps to get there, and choose partners that are invested in your success. So I know that was a lot. I was all over the place with that answer, but I think the big two
No,
things
no, no.
are,
These were good.
okay, great. Big two things are to really think about higher ed and where it fits. And secondly, be strategic about where you want to go, because that will also help you get a better grip on whether higher education is necessary for your journey.
I'm meditating on what you're saying, because I feel that one of the key things that's important is understand what your natural skill set is. So I believe all of us are gifted with skill set that that's just part of who we are. And I think it gets lost sometimes because maybe it could be outside motivators or influences that control or plant seeds that you should do this because it's going to generate a specific type of income, or you may be able to live a certain type of lifestyle, instead of looking internally what is personally drivers for you and what's your natural skill set. I know a couple of things that I try to do with my daughter is, and I'm taking this from my own life, is helping her to see these are your natural things. These are the natural things in your life that you're very good at. Now, how does that fit into what it is you want to do? And to not influence it based on my opinion as her parent,
Yep.
which is
And
very
that's a
hard,
tough balance.
Right. Yeah. But then the reason why I decided to do that was because I want her to know when she graduates, without a shadow of a doubt, I know I'm good at these things. I don't need anybody to tell me. Now, how do I plot the rest of my life based on knowing these things? And I feel like that will help guide her in a way that she may or may not get lost. I'm hoping that she won't get lost in opportunities. So I hope she gets a lot of opportunities, but I hope that she knows for sure, like, yes, that's an opportunity, but it doesn't align with what it is that I want to do. It doesn't align with my purpose. It doesn't align with my goals. And so as I was listening to you say this, you're telling people to do this in some cases after the fact, but you should be doing this all the time.
Yeah, it's so
So I
important.
love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I love what you're doing with your daughter because it's very hard. As a parent to look at your child and you see these things in them and you want them to go in a certain direction, but at the same time, you have to let them develop that ability to know, what's good for them, what they're good at and where they fit into the world and
Mm-hmm.
not and avoid the temptation to pick them up and plug them in somewhere, because of what you see
Right,
and what you know about
exactly.
what's out there.
Yeah,
So,
yes. And also just even always doing that with yourself. So what I'm hearing is these two things, I think you're always doing them. Assessing where you need to be in this world, right? And how do you fit? But I think the key point that you said was that whole thing about as women, and I don't think it's necessarily just a Black woman issue. I think in women, we seek validation on so many things instead of being confident about who we are, what we want, and then going strategically after it. It is nothing wrong with that. And so I just love the fact that you highlight knowing where you want to go, and then also the power of relationships, because relationships can carry you places that a degree will not. That's my personal opinion.
oh
You
no,
may have
it's a
some other
fact.
thoughts. What do you think?
No, I think it's a fact, and I am a reformed believer in that because early on I used to think, oh well, I have the degree, I have these internships, I've got the experiences, let my work speak for me. But when you go into an organization, work there are a lot of people who are going to apply for the same job who have work and internships. But if one person knows someone on the inside or has, a previous experience with them or a common bond, then that bond is something that will push them over the top above everyone else. And it took me years and years to accept the fact that those personal relationships are often valued more so than the work history because it's something about knowing a person, or having a reference from somebody that that makes people feel like, okay, well, this is a better direction to go in. Because really, when it comes to work, if you're hiring somebody, you want them to do something, you can train them to do whatever it is, but you can't necessarily get that feel for, is this a person of integrity? Is this person reliable? The things that you might want in a person, you cannot necessarily glean from their work history. So now that I know that, I'm definitely, focused on expanding my network and also just maintaining myself. I think it's important for people to remember that the things that you do add up to you as a person, and um, people look at you and the choices that you make, and that sends a message about you and whatever your personal brand is or your reputation. So it's important to remember that the things that you do add up to something, and that something is what people are going to associate with hearing your name. And for me, when people hear my name, I want them to think of things that are good, things that bring value to relationships, to
Mm-hmm.
organizations. And again, if you have a personal reference to attest to that, that trumps the best resume you've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I have your first book, The Time Value of
Okay. Oh
Life.
yeah.
Looking back at so so in looking back at what you wrote in that book, Would you change anything or any advice that you would tell yourself now that you didn't know then?
Oh my. I wouldn't change anything because the overall message of the book was for people to treat time like a valuable asset. And I stand by that
Mm.
100%. Um, I look back on the book and it's funny because I'm reading these words from my younger self and thinking, oh, you little baby, you had so much more experience to gain. But the core of it is still what's most important, is that time is an asset and you have to be deliberate about putting your time into people and activities that are going to bring value to this life experience. And that I think no
Mm.
matter how old I get, I'm gonna stand by that message.
Right. No, that is a powerful message, a very powerful message. So I want to go back to tips. So when a student or a graduate came to you and they had already created this debt, this student loan debt, and they're trying to figure out how to maneuver such that they don't drown, because a lot of times that's how how adults feel, that I was making decisions, I didn't have all of the right resources around me, and I thought I was making the best decision at the time, and now I find myself with this boatload of debt that is overwhelming. What are some of the things that they should do now, like a couple of tips that they should do now to maneuver their approach with dealing with this debt?
Okay. So for most borrowers, they're actually benefiting from a forbearance. So federal student loans, the payments were paused, the interest accrual was paused as of March 2020. And that forbearance is set to expire at the end of September. So that means that most people have several months left to really think about how they're going to approach their student loans once payments resume. So my first tip is to know your complete loan portfolio. And I know some people say, oh, I already know the loans that I have, but you'd be surprised at how many people sit down with me and think that they owe $30,000, but it turns out they owe 40. So the best way to get a grip on everything is to get a copy of your credit report, because the credit report is going to include both federal loans and private loans. And there's some people who forget that they took out, loans from a bank as opposed to loans from the federal government. The credit report is going to include it all. So the second thing that I recommend is becoming aware of federal benefits. Well, because federal government has several benefits for student loan borrowers that private lenders do not have. So take a look at studentaid.gov. That's where they can find more information about programs like public service loan forgiveness, teacher loan forgiveness, and then after the federal level, go on down to the state, because many states have benefits for student loan borrowers. They just might not be highly advertised. For instance, Maryland has a student loan debt relief tax credit. This year, I think that credit was like $1,200 per borrower. But if you don't know about a program like that, you can't get access to the benefit. So
Yes,
definitely take a look at the federal benefits, the
exactly.
state benefits, yes, and apply for everyone possible. Also, visit your employer's HR website or reach out to somebody in benefits to ask if there are any incentives for student loan borrowers. And aside from that, there are also repayment assistance programs that depend on your occupation and sometimes where in a state you work. So maximize those benefits, take advantage of every single one. The third thing I'd say is to really think about your goal for repaying the debt. For some people, they want it to just get it over with as quickly as possible. Other people may not have the cash and they say, you know what, I'm willing to drag this out. I just want to make the minimum payment each month. But then there's a large section of people in the middle who may be able to have some of that debt forgiven. So think about it. Do you want to pursue forgiveness, or would you rather just be rid of the debt? And once you've figured out your goal, then it's time to actually choose a repayment plan. The reason I place it in this order is because I want people to be able to live their lives and pay student loans, not pay their student loans and then figure out how they're going to live the rest of their lives. That, to me, that just does not work for me. That's not, to me, that doesn't speak to being financially well. And that's where I want to see people. So first is you got to know the entire loan portfolio.
Right.
Second is you got to be aware of benefits and max them out. Third is to set your personal goal for repayment and then go back to the lender and look at the repayment plans and see how they fit best with the rest of your plans.
Mm. I love that. And you know, what
Ooh.
came to my mind was when you were talking about going to corporate HR and seeing what they offer. I know one of my former employers, I think it's PricewaterhouseCoopers. I used to work for them.
Mhm.
I believe they actually they have offered or are offering employees some student loan forgiveness opportunities, or they're repaying part of their loan or something like that. And I think,
Mhm.
that is so powerful, because then it's like, that's another thing to look at as you map out what you're trying to do. Why not, add, if I'm going to seek out an employer, let's find out
Mhm.
how they help me as an employee with my student loan debt. Like, I'm like, that should be
Exactly.
just, let me just look at this, because this can, benefit me in such a great way. So not only just
Mhm.
working for the federal government, that's an option. We live on the Washington metropolitan area. So yeah, a lot of people work for the federal government, and making sure that you understand how that works. But also in the corporate arena, there's a
Mhm.
lot of companies now that are really trying to help their employees to manage their student loan debt. So I love that you said to check with their corporate HR, in addition to what federal programs exist and the state programs. That is
Mhm.
fantastic.
Yes.
So let's talk about you a little bit.
Okay.
And I want to know about why you decided to, because you were in the college arena, so you worked
Mhm.
in, financial aid. Um, what attracted you to working in that arena?
Well, it was when I got more deliberate about the job search. I started looking
Mm,
for jobs that involved financial education and students. And when I limited my scope to those two things, at the time I initially was searching for a job, there was one job that met my standards at the time. So I applied for that job. It's interesting because I ended up not getting the job. But a couple of years later, the employer sought me out and said, "You know what? We made a mistake, and would you be willing to come back?" And so I said, okay. I appreciate owning up to that, and I'll try it." So that's how I ended up taking that
right.
job, because it put together two things that I was passionate about: college students and financial education. So once I took that job, things started to things started coming together for me, because I was so laser focused on what I wanted to do. Like, this is my lane. And once I knew that that was my lane, it was also very helpful that not a lot of people were involved in that particular line of work. So when you're very clear about what your expertise is, and your area of expertise happens to be one where there aren't a lot of other people in that, you have a lot of latitude to build things out, to test things, to become a thought leader, a subject matter expert, or whatever. So I just picked an area. When I picked it, I wasn't thinking that strategically. I was just thinking about what I liked to do, what I was good at, and how I could help people. But it became more clear to me once I got into the work that it's possible that I could actually influence how people on other campuses deal with students who are either on campus or have graduated, who come back and are looking for help. And I could really go about impacting change for the better. And that's what keeps me doing the work that I do now.
I love it. I love it. So if you had to give advice to those coming up behind you and have an interest in pursuing this type of work, what advice would you give them?
I would say seek out people who are doing the work that you want to do and learn from them. So much of my experience in the beginning of this type of work was really creating things, and in some cases, feeling like I had to reinvent the wheel. But money's been around forever, just about. People have been around for a long time. So these are not new things. It's just that there weren't a lot of documented methods, a lot of studies about this kind of thing. So I would tell them, stick to it, because if you're passionate about it and you're good about it, you can make a difference and make a living at the same time. But basically, you need to get a team and find people who are doing the work that you want to do and see how you can get involved. I'm not saying that you can't work for yourself or anything like that. I'm just saying that it helps to learn from others, especially in a space where there's still so much more room for growth. And this is one of those emerging areas where, yeah, people talk about financial literacy or, occasionally financial wellness for college students, but there's still not there's not a huge network of people that are doing this work. A network exists, but it's not as prevalent, let's say, as people who work in financial aid, processing financial aid. So look for people that are doing the kind of work that you want to do and think about what you could add to that work. What's your spark? What's the little extra sauce or something that you would sprinkle onto whatever it is that they do? Find out how you can add to it and go in that direction. And also, just try to contribute as much as you'd like to gain. It's If you're looking for people that you want to work with, it helps when you bring something to the table. You don't just want to go and say, oh, well, I'm here for the ride. Well, I'm here for the ride, but this is also what I can bring to make the ride a little bit more enjoyable or impactful for everybody who's on it with me. So be willing to give, be strategic, but don't try to do everything on your own, because the thoughts that you're having, you can trust that other people have probably had those same thoughts, and you will save yourself a lot of time by seeking out those people and being part of a team.
Mm. And if you had to talk to a junior or senior in high school who are making plans for college, what things would you tell that student and their parents to prepare for their child or children attending college in 1 to 2 years?
Okay. So I would tell them, go straight to the source for certain information, especially where finances are concerned. This is not something that you want to ask your friends or your neighbors about, how much is college going to cost. This is where you want to go straight to the source. So if you're interested in a certain school, go to that school's financial aid page or the student accounting page so that you can see exactly how much it would cost for you or your student to be on campus. So one, go straight to the source. Number two, look for ways to maximize your use of other people's money. This is where, again, we go back to that search at the federal government level, search at the state government level, search in your community. You can search headlines and hashtags to see who's giving out scholarships and put all of that together so that the out-of-pocket cost to you and your household is at a minimum. And the final thing I would say is think about college as a strategic life decision. This is not, you've got to go to the dream school. That's where I was headed when it was my time to make that choice. I wanted to go to the University of Michigan because I just thought Chris Webber and Jalen Rose were just, the best ever in the Fab Five. I liked that feel of it, but I never set foot in Michigan, didn't know a thing about Ann Arbor, but I was willing to go there because that was the dream school for me. And I was not thinking about college practically, how it truly fits into your life. College is a place where you're going to learn skills, you're going to make relationships, but ultimately it's the bridge between, your high school and you're becoming self-sufficient and independent. So you want to go to a place that's going to set you up to build that life on your own. That means you think about what you want to do with your life and you find the institution that's going to give you the degree, if you need a degree, to get gainful employment in that career. So try to, I don't want to sound as if it's something that can't be fun or you can't go someplace that's nice, but have your priorities straight. This is a strategic life decision. The fun, the relationships, and all of that stuff that comes along with it, but that's not the primary driver of where you should go to school. So just remember where college fits in life and hold on to that when you're making
No.
your decision.
Yes, yes, yes. Love it, love it, love it. Very good tips. Very good tips. So if people want to follow your work, can you share with us how they can do that?
Sure. So my website's online at tisasilver.com. I also have a Facebook page. They can like the page. It's Dr. Tisa Silver Canady. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram as Tisa Silver. I must admit, I don't share as much as I could. Because sometimes, with all these platforms, it can get a little bit exhausting, but I'm there. I also have a contact page for people that have questions. They can fill out a form on my website, and sometimes I answer those questions. Sometimes I build presentations around those questions, because if one person has a question and reaches out, I know that somebody else is thinking the same thing. So best place to find me is tisasilver.com.
Love it. Thank you, Tisa, for sharing such great, insightful, informative information that I think will definitely help my audience. I think continuing to share information that empowers us to make wiser decisions is what I'm trying to do. And I know that's what you're trying to do too, because we're both purpose driven people.
Absolutely.
Wanting to get information out there. Yeah, wanting to get information out there that's going to be beneficial so that people can grow and leave legacies to the next generation. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the platform. And I don't know if this will make it into the episode, but you're just so real, and I appreciate your heart for realness and having these types of conversations that can really make a difference for the next generation. It's in this business of money, you come across a lot of characters, and you know this. So it's
Yes.
really, really refreshing to just have conversations with that candor, with that respect, but also with the intent to provide a benefit to those who are coming up behind us. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate you for trusting me with your audience.
Thank you so much. Thank you.